Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am honored to be joined by pioneering and intuitive healer, as well as best-selling author of The Secret Language of Your Body, Segal. Anna has spent over 2 decades helping people heal emotionally, physically, and energetically, and she also helps them unlock the secret language and healing of their body. So we're going to be talking to her about what she does, why she does it, what she's up to, and what she's going to be up to. So Anna, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Curtis. It's so beautiful to be here with you.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
So I help people to connect to their own bodies, to listen to their intuitive voice and start to put all the pieces of both their health and their life together. I really believe that our lives reflect our health, and our health essentially reflects how we live our lives. And my own journey started because I was in a lot of pain and I was going round and round in circles, seeing a lot of medical professionals. But I realized that they often look at things in a very generalized way and give kind of the same peel for an issue that they call, digestive issue or like I had psoriasis. They give everyone a very similar type of treatment and it just wasn't working for me. So I got to a place where I was in agony, could hardly walk, had digestive issues, anxiety, psoriasis, and I was seeing practitioners 5 days a week, basically. And then I had this, what I call an epiphany, a transformation, because I ended up in this chiropractor's office who had seen me for about a year and I couldn't move. I was really scared that I was going to end up in the wheelchair. And he basically said that, your body's stuck. And I said, I know that part. How are you going to help me? And he said, I can't. Go home. Your body wants to be stuck. And this is where I really feel that I discovered the secret language of the body, because on the way home, I was so enraged about what he said. But I realized that I had been taught to go and see experts in the health field with that attitude that they had to fix me, that I had nothing to do with my own body or with my own healing. And I decided that I was going to take responsibility, not for what others may have done to me, but for the fact that I had some power over understanding my body. And so I went home, and even though I didn't know what I was doing, I ended up breathing with the pain and kind of placing my hands on my body, asking if there is anything higher, and really feeling this warmth go through my body. And then kind of asking if I could see my back. Don't know where it came from, but it kind of happened. So it happened that this light went on in my head and I literally could see my spine. And through that experience, I got a lot of insight in terms of my childhood and my life with my family and ancestors, like my grandparents, and the trauma they've gone through. And just the fact that I had no boundaries in how I was operating in terms of my body. And then the next day, my body was about 70% better in terms of pain. And I spent the next several weeks really connecting and learning this language, this what is it really trying to tell me? And by the end, I had no more psoriasis, which is a very unpleasant skin condition, and never had it since. My back pain disappeared, have never had it since. My digestion improved, because I actually really think that there's a lot of ancestral kind of assimilation there that needs to that takes a lot longer to work on, and my anxiety went down, and I realized that I could, by a little accident, that I could help other people do the same as I was able to help myself, and I've been doing it since.
Well, speaking of that, you do talk about in your bio how that illness is rarely just physical. So what other deeper layers do you feel are being overlooked?
So many layers. So how many hours do we have for this? So from everything from childhood, from the womb, to be honest, from how your mother felt. I can't tell you how many people I have worked with that have long-standing depression and anxiety, and we literally found that something happened when the mother was pregnant, and the person was essentially, because as a growing fetus, you just absorb. You do not have any boundaries. You cannot discern. And many mothers have gone through traumas, or maybe even loss or discomfort, because I really believe in our society we don't have enough support for pregnant women. And so this anxiety just gets taken on, or it could be medication where people are medicating themselves because that's what happened during their birth or during the time when they were in the womb. So it's quite big in terms of that. And then the developmental stages during childhood, so many of us got stunted essentially because of different things that happened. Maybe we felt rejected, maybe there was a trauma, maybe we just didn't feel like we got the love that we needed, and from that we develop all sorts of issues in our body, anything from back pain, especially lower back pain like I had, that was definitely childhood related, and to skin conditions, to just having, again, digestive issues, reproductive issues. So there's so many aspects to it. And then essentially, as we get older, a lot of us go through relationship traumas, for instance, and that is very connected to our heart and chest area and lungs. And so we start to push things away, shut down our throat and our ability to communicate. The reason people say pain in the neck, this person's a pain in my neck, essentially, is because we, even in our language, we already understand how these things occur, that we get overwhelmed, we carry too much on our shoulders or on our hip area, is so connected to our family. So when we start to understand this, we actually have the possibility of healing, of transforming these different traumas. And like I said, there's ancestral ones. So, for instance, when we're looking at kidneys and kidney disease, and blood issues, I've always pretty much without exception found that there's some kind of ancestral trauma there that is not processed. So we need to look at, how a perspective changed from maybe potentially one that was open and positive and creative in our lives, to one of victimhood, to one of stuckness, to one of not feeling like we can be ourselves and express ourselves through the experiences that we've had.
Well, speaking of experiences, some people experience pain or illness in a different part of the body than where it actually started. Can you explain why that is?
Well, absolutely, because, and I'll use an example for this. So a few years ago, I was teaching, and in one of the classes, I had a young woman who was 25, and she had spinal cancer. So she had tumors in her spine, and she was trying really, really hard to work on these tumors. And I said to her, can I please tune into you? Because I just want to get a sense. And usually I do guide people through it, but this was a particular situation where her cancer got to quite to stage 3. And so I I really wanted to make sure that she had the right guidance because she was so young and just got married. And I said to her, as I was kind of focused and connecting to her inner being, I saw that when she was younger, she had a massive, major relationship conflict and issue with her father. Her father was extremely controlling. He put her down. He shut her down. He told her what to do and what not to do. He was quite abusive in lots of ways. And what actually ended up happening was that she shut down her voice. And when we looked at where the tumor was, it was at the back of her neck where it started. And then there were more that went down and the more I asked her questions and explored, the more I was clear that starting from whacking on her spine was not going to give us the result that we needed for her transformation, because it was the result of pushing everything away for years and years and not dealing with it. So we ended up working with her voice, with her boundaries, with her inner child, let's call it, with this archetype of herself that got stuck, which is a part of herself that just felt completely unseen and shut down. And as we started to do that, and she essentially got her voice back, she was able to start communicating with her father in a very different way, which also started changing this tumor and allowing her to heal. So this is kind of where we need to be aware that where things are showing up, especially if it's a long-term or a chronic condition, is not necessarily where it started and where we need to be looking.
Well, can you explain what you mean when you say the secret language of your body and how we can understand what our body is actually saying to us?
Absolutely. So, in my own experience, I felt like my body was speaking Japanese, literally. And it was symbolic, it was unclear. I had no real understanding of it, except that my pain was getting worse and worse. So, all of us know this when we feel uncomfortable inside the body, whether it's physical pain, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whatever is going on, we don't feel like this is healthy. We don't feel like we are happy within our own skin, so to speak. And so to me, the secret language of the body is something that we should all learn. It, in lots of ways, it is completely logical, because when we start to look at it, we go, well, what does my head do? What does my brain do? And we start to say, well, it takes information, and we think with our head, and we connect things together, and we understand. And so when we start to look at this secret language of the body, which wouldn't be secret if we were taught it, we start to go, well, what is breaking down there? Is it because we are just so overwhelmed? There's too much going on and our mind is going everywhere and we can't connect the pieces. So we end up with headaches or migraines or a nervous system disorder. You know, uh, is the life that I'm living too much for me and I'm absolutely not listening to my body? And so now I can't think straight and I'm actually overwhelmed and feeling anxiety and stress. So we look at, our ears, the ears are about hearing. So when you start having hearing issues, what is it that either you're not listening to? And again, we can break it down into the left and the right side of the bodies because they're different. One is more feminine, one's more an inner experience of how I uniquely experience everything in my life, how I think, how I feel, how I nurture myself or not nurture myself, how I listen to myself. This is the left side, whereas the right side is about what I do for others, how I show up in the world, what kind of experiences I have, what beliefs I have about money and work and my ability to manifest things and give to others. So they're completely different but very complementary. And so when we start to kind of understand and break the body down in that way, we start to go, oh, okay, which side of the body is my issue at? What does it do? So let's say we look at knees, and knees are about flexibility. They help us to walk, they help us to move forward. So again, we would go, well, if I have a knee issue, is there something in my life or my life experience where I'm feeling stuck or I just can't move on? And again, if we're looking even more specifically at the left and the right sides of the body, we might go, well, the left side is more feminine, so it's also going to connect to my feminine experience and maybe the most important feminine people in my life, like my mother, a mother figure, or if you're a man, maybe it's your partner, or a woman. Anyone could have a partner, obviously, as a female, but it could be my partner, it could be my daughter, it could be my wife, or my best friend. So we start looking at it and we go, is there something connected to my relationship where I can't move forward? Maybe I need to forgive, maybe I need to work on a relationship. Maybe I don't, there's been a conflict that hasn't been resolved. And the same with the right knee, your relationship with the most important masculine people in your life. And also how you experience yourself in terms of, am I achieving in the world what I want to achieve, or do I feel really stuck in terms of my purpose? So essentially, the secret language of the body is constantly telling you, based on which part of the body is giving you pain or stress or discomfort, where you need to go. And by logically, as well as I guess intuitively starting to understand this body, you can understand exactly how your life is impacting you and how your thinking, your beliefs about life is impacting your body. And so you can then have a choice to change.
Well, when someone is feeling overwhelmed by emotions or symptoms, can you give some best practice tips on where they can go, or how they can start the healing process?
Absolutely. We need to slow down. We cannot heal without slowing down because we need to reconnect. When we're overwhelmed, when too many things are happening, it's because we're running and we're not listening, and it's like we're outside of ourselves. So we have to get back inside ourselves. So it's one of the first things that we can do, especially when we're overwhelmed, and a very simple practice is just to stand up. Place your hands on your heart, take some slow, deep breaths in and out. Ask a question: where am I at in terms of how I'm feeling right now? What is making me uncomfortable? What is making me tense or anxious? And then literally shaking your body for about 30 seconds to a minute and shaking it vigorously without hurting yourself, obviously. And then stopping and taking slow, deep breaths in and out, and just calming down by breathing through your nose and then breathing out through your mouth, but with your lips pursed. So they're a little bit closed, and it's just as you breathe in through your nose, very slowly, you open your chest, you allow this breath to come into your chest and your solar plexus in your stomach. And then as you breathe out, the idea is, I'm letting go. I'm letting go of this stress. And then you might work. I love color because I really feel color helps us. So when we go into nature and we look at greenery, we immediately start to relax and calm down. And so when we're anxious, we want to calm the nervous system down. And green is a beautiful, amazing color that can do that. And so we can visualize just this warm rain of green light moving into the spine, into the nervous system, and then just allowing ourselves to feel this energy kind of moving into our feet, because we want to get grounded, and if possible, even going outside for a moment if it is possible, and and standing, if you can, on the grass for a few moments without shoes on, and really allowing yourself to reconnect to your own body. And I mean, this is very, very simple. It's like step one. And then I really encourage people to talk about this with other people that are close to them, or journal. What is making me so stressed? What's overwhelming me? How can I work with other people so that I feel like I'm not the only one doing everything? Because that's where overwhelm usually happens. How can we have more boundaries in our life? How can we work out what to do where, especially in a family, everyone is contributing rather than one person? And so we start to really change how we experience stress, and then resting, actually taking time to rest.
Well, I know that you work with the left and right side of the body to explore feminine and masculine dynamics. What have you seen that reveal in people in regards to their healing?
Let's take a quick break.
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
So much. I've seen so much. So I'll share a story with this as well. I had a lady who actually, I didn't know that she had a huge problem with her right ankle, and that she was actually going to have surgery after this course that she came to, which was called the Awaken the Healer Within course. And when I was connecting with her, and it's quite a funny story because she was very skeptical. I was teaching this particular course in Europe, and I was teaching it in this space at the bottom of a bookshop. So they had this healing space, and upstairs there was a bookshop, and she was helping in the bookshop, and I'd see her all the time, and she'd look at me in this really skeptical way, like she didn't really believe in what I was doing. And then 2 years later, she was in my course, and I said to her, "Why are you in the course?" And she said, "Well, for the last 2 years, I've been observing people coming into the course, and they look so sad and unhappy, and then they come out after several days and they look like they've had a facelift. So I'm here for a facelift." So I thought it was quite funny, but I didn't actually know her issue. And so she had this ankle where she was going to have surgery. And like I said, I was on the right side. And as I know, the right side is very connected to moving forward, and especially your relationship with an important masculine person. And I didn't know this, but she had not spoken to her father for 20 years. So she had this very, painful, difficult relationship with him, but obviously she didn't associate it with her ankle. But she also had no self-confidence. And again, from her relationships, not just with her father, but with different people, she just was constantly putting herself down. And I noticed that, and I said to her, you know what, we're going to work on your heart. Like I said, I didn't know about the ankle. We're actually going to work on your heart, and we're going to work on self-care, self-understanding, changing this self-hate into self-care, self-love, confidence. And so we did quite a few processes around this, and it was amazing. Like, she was glowing, and it was literally like she did have this facelift, and she was in her mid 60s at the time. And then I didn't hear anything from her, but the lady who was translating for me, she, because this was in French, she said to me, "Oh my God, did you hear about the miracle?" And I said, "What was the miracle?" And she said, "Well, that lady that you helped with her heart, that you worked with, strengthening her confidence and self-belief." She said a week, or it could have been days after you did those processes, her father called her for the first time in 20 years, and they had this amazing, beautiful conversation. And she said, they're really healing their relationship. And she said, and her ankle healed. She didn't need to go and have surgery because it just kind of spontaneously healed. And it made complete sense to me of how that happened, even though we didn't actually work on her ankle. We worked on her heart and her self-belief, and also her forgiveness and trauma around her father. And so when you work in terms of that masculine and feminine, the feminine is the heart because it's on the left side, and the masculine, was her ability to move forward, even though we weren't focused on the ankle. But I have seen this so many times where people might work on their feminine. I've had many men in the workshop who have, and all of a sudden they go, "Oh my God, my relationship with my wife has improved dramatically, in my own intuition and my own understanding of boundaries and how I need to communicate." So it's just beautiful when we really listen to the body and understand it.
We'll talk about how ancestral patterns and inherited trauma live on in the body and what is needed to truly work with them.
Absolutely. So it's very obvious to see ancestral patterns showing up through behavior, right? So we end up taking on the behavior often of a family, or we take on the behavior when we don't even know. So for instance, let's say people have had family members like I've had who have gone through the war, and there is a lot of fear and anxiety of going through the war. And actually, our kidneys and our adrenal glands are connected to grief, sadness, and anxiety, high levels of cortisol level, and stress. And so when we have a lot of members in the family that have had trauma, they end up potentially behaving when we're younger in very controlling ways, which also affects the digestive system because we don't know why, or they're very numb. And when we don't know things, which is very challenging, we start kind of acting them out. And this is what you see also in so many families, where children will act out what the parents have suppressed, because, and this is known in psychology, because of this this energy, like this ancestral energy that needs to be somehow worked on. So for me, for instance, I mentioned that I had digestive problems where I couldn't really digest my food. And essentially, I realized that my grandmother at 13, when her mother told her, mother was clairvoyant, she said to her, "You're the only one who's going to survive the war." And she had 8 children. My grandmother could not digest that experience. So she just went numb and blocked it, and amazingly, absolutely incredibly survived the war, just kind of being there on her own. And then my grandfather ended up going to a camp in Siberia because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time at 13, sorry, I think 14. And he was at a bakery and somebody stole something and he was standing there. And so he was blamed for it and spent 10 years just starving and being treated in the most horrendous, horrible ways. And neither of them really processed this or talked about it. They were really scared. And everybody, literally everybody in that family, from my mom to her brother to me to my brother to my cousins, have digestive issues, which is what ancestral patterns are about. It's this unprocessed trauma. And so my mum and I in particular have been processing this and transforming it. My mum ended up with cancer in her intestines because, again, it built up not just from her own family, and her father had that, but from her own trauma that she was replaying. And so the idea is that we start to understand that when something huge happens in the family, even if we push it away and we try and make it a secret, essentially, it shows up. It shows up in these, weak areas, or it shows up in the blood. My grandmother ended up dying from leukemia, and I knew that 100% that she was going to have a blood problem, because, as well as the digestive issues, because she lost her family and she didn't know how to mourn. She didn't know how to really, like, she just froze herself, how to really deal with it. And your blood is family. And so it had to show up. I was just amazed that it showed up in her 70s. So when we understand that, we start to go, right, so how can I firstly separate what is my trauma and what is somebody else's, what's not actually mine? And how can I start to process the experiences? And I teach courses on ancestry or ancestral healing, and we work through archetypes. So we actually get a sense of the different people in our family, and through connecting with them and this kind of archetype of them, we start to get so much information, even if you've never met them, about their story and why they felt like the way they did. And then we end up having compassion and letting go of, and again, I teach people how to do that, of what we're holding on to that's not ours, but also what we can learn from our family, because we can either see them as victims of different circumstances, or we can also turn it around and have compassion and see how courageous they might be, which in healing, your perspective is literally everything. Your perspective can change your health, can change how you view life, can change how you feel.
When you talk about how some emotional healing practices that promise fast results can be unsafe, can you explain why they're harmful and what you do differently?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things that happens in terms of emotions is that firstly, none of us have really been taught from childhood or very few, if I should say, how to deal with their emotions, how to refine them, how to process them. And so what happens is that when we're working with an emotion, we don't understand where it starts, we don't understand where the middle is, we don't understand where it ends. And so I've been teaching since I was 22. What a lot of practitioners want to do, or coaches or whatever, teachers, is to get the emotion out, which can be helpful to a degree. But if you push and force that through intense breathing or through kind of pushing a person too much emotionally, there could be a catharsis and an explosion, but this can actually take over your ability to think, because we have subtle energies and subtle bodies, and our thinking, when it's weakened and the emotion takes over, can cause constant anxiety in the future. So most people don't know that. And that's why I feel like working with emotions needs to be very gentle and very conscious, with the awareness that we're not trying to push them away. We're not trying to force them. We're not trying to block them or get rid of them. What we're trying to do is to understand. And so over the years, I realized that the best way to understand is through what I called archetypal healing. So archetypes are essentially extensions of who we are. They create our personality and how we experience life. So everybody has experienced childhood. So we have this archetype of the child, but it's connected to all the different ages and stages of development. And so when we're working, in particular, anxiety or trauma, or let's say rejection, we need to become aware of where in the body we feel that, because the body is actually like a map, and the more we get to know it, the more we realize that we have these energy centers called the chakras that a lot of people are aware of, and every chakra is actually connected to a particular archetype that gives you the story of your emotions. So for instance, if I have an emotion of anger in my throat, it is not the same anger as I have in my heart or my liver, and is not connected to the same archetype, the same timeline, the same storyline of my life. And so when we work with an archetype, what we actually become aware of is structure. So it gives us structure, and it tells us that this is when the emotion, let's say, of anger has happened, but it's anger about, let's say it's the liver, it's the anger I have with the fact that maybe my dad wasn't there when I really needed him. And so I'm still really angry and I feel rejected, and I push other men away because I'm scared of this rejection, or I'm too needy and I'm constantly needing them. But when I look at the archetype rather than the specific emotion of rejection or neediness, which is too generalized, I can look at what was the experience. How did I take that experience with my father? Can I now connect with that younger self in me, and through my own wisdom re-nurture or reparent, so to speak, this part of me, so that I'm now, as this rejected person, I can now grow into being accepted and loved and not needy in that sense, and understanding this specificity actually makes people work slowly and deeply with these parts of themselves, knowing the story, knowing the perspective, knowing the experience, as well as the emotion, and then transforming it all together and sensing how they're growing and becoming a different person.
Well, tell us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that listeners need to be aware of.
So I'm working on a book about actually understanding the different stages of healing, and everything that I've already spoken about here is in this book. So I'm very excited about getting to the editing stage of it. But I'm always teaching people, and I have courses where people can just begin, like the secret language of your body, which is based on my book, but much deeper and more expanded in terms of exactly the steps you need to take to awaken your body, to tune into it, to understand it, to heal pain, diseases, which processes to work on, how to work on it, how to work with your emotions and archetypes and so on. So it's not a long course, but it's very in-depth and clear, and a great way for people to really get to know their body. So it's called The Secret Language of Your Body Uncovered, and there is a free masterclass on my website, Segal.com, which talks about it, and you just have to put Segal.com/secret, and you can watch it. And I always do processes in my classes, even if they're free, so that people can experience it and start their journey. But then the people who want to go deeper and already have a foundation of knowledge, I teach this 10-day training where it's called Awaken the Healer Within, and it's a complete foundation of pretty much all that you really need to know to start helping yourself, helping your family from any angle and any part of your life that you're dealing with, whether it's a health condition, whether it's relationship, whether it's a relationship with yourself and confidence or lack of self love or understanding or safety, or whether it is intuition that you want to awaken, or your spirituality and deepen your real understanding of who you are and what you're about, your purpose, whatever it is that is really important for you, your emotional state. Obviously, we go through all the 7 most important archetypes in that course as well, and incredible processes to essentially start to transform every area of your life. So I'm always doing masterclasses around this one as well to give people insights. I will be doing some in the near future as well. So going to my website, putting your email in, is one of the best ways to be alerted to when this is happening. And I often do VIP sessions as well, where I tune into people and answer very personal, specific questions as well, because that's probably the easiest and the best way to connect with me, as I don't do one-on-one sessions. I only do groups and teaching. But again, all of this information can be found on innersegal.com, or going to my Facebook page, which is Inner Segal Author, which is the same for Instagram as well.
Okay, we'll close this out with some final thoughts. Maybe if that was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to touch on, or any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
Biggest thing is understanding that even though it may seem difficult or hopeless, or you just don't know where to start, there is hope. You can learn to connect to your body if you are interested, if you're open to it, if you're open to being guided. The reason to work with somebody like myself is to save yourself years and years of confusion, because there are very, very specific steps that you don't want to skip that allow somebody either to heal or not to heal. And obviously, when we talk about responsibility in something like this, it's not really about self-blame in any way or form, but it is about saying, like I did, I can heal myself. It is my body. If my body got sick, then I can connect with it. I can learn its language. I can understand why I became sick, and I can turn it around. And this puts you into the driver's seat and helps you to truly awaken the healer within. And even if it doesn't happen instantaneously, don't get, upset and, and feel hopeless, because things that have been there for a long time do take time to heal. And it's all about putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, and actually allowing yourself to acknowledge your progress. And those people who acknowledge their progress definitely heal the fastest. But do not procrastinate, take action. And the sooner you take action around your health, the faster your healing is going to be.
Ladies and gentlemen, Segal.com. Please be sure to follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Visit www.curveball337.com for more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. And Anna, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
For more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, visit www.curveball337.com. Until next time, keep living the dream.